Welcome to Discover Before Sleep channel. Beneath the dark surface of our oceans lives one of the oldest survivors on Earth. Sharks have ruled these waters for over 400 million years, silent, precise, and perfectly adapted to a world where every mistake can be fatal. This is a story of instinct, survival, and the hidden life of the deep. If you enjoy stories like this, you can subscribe. To support the channel, you can also like the video and leave a comment. Now, let's begin the journey. The world began in a silence so profound it felt heavy, a weight of shadow and stone before the concept of sound had even been conceived. There was no sky as we know it, only a churning, violet atmosphere thick with the exhalations of a cooling planet. Volcanic ridges tore through the crust like jagged teeth, bleeding molten fire into a landscape that was yet to know the touch of a single drop of rain. But the transformation was coming. As the earth cooled, the heavens began to buckle under the weight of their own moisture. For centuries, a deluge fell, not as a gentle mist, but as a violent, relentless pounding that pooled into the hollows of the world. This was the birth of the primitive sea, a vast, toxic cauldron of minerals, salts, and steam. It was an environment of chaos, where lightning danced across the surface of the black waves, and the chemistry of life began its slow, agonizingly patient crawl toward complexity. In these early, shallow basins, the water was a thick soup of dissolved elements. The salt was not yet the balanced brine of a modern coral reef. It was a harsh, acidic cocktail. Yet, within this volatility, the first whispers of movement emerged. Microscopic structures began to organize, fueled by the heat of deep-sea vents where the planet's internal fire met the new crushing weight of the water. For eons, life was small and soft, a collection of drifting cells that knew only the rhythm of the tides and the warmth of the vents. But as the oceans deepened and stabilized, the stakes of survival rose. The world was no longer just a place to exist. It was becoming a place to compete. The first marine predators were not the titans we imagine today, but strange, armored creatures that looked more like living stones than hunters. They moved with a clattering rigidity, encased in heavy plates of bone that protected them from the crushing pressure and the snapping jaws of their peers. The light of the sun, still dim through the thick atmospheric haze, struggled to penetrate more than a few dozen feet below the surface. In this twilight realm, the first true hunters began to refine the art of the chase. These early forms were experimental biological drafts written in the sand and silt of a young world. Some were like elongated worms with rows of grasping hooks. Others were broad-headed scavengers that sifted through the mud. But the ocean demanded more. It demanded efficiency. It demanded a body that could move through the resistance of water with the grace of a ghost. The heavy, bony armor of the early fish was a defense, but it was also a prison. It was heavy and cumbersome, requiring immense energy to move. Evolution was looking for a breakthrough, a way to be light, strong, and fast all at once. As the millions of years ground forward, the shallow seas began to teem with life. The great dying and the great birthing of species happened in cycles that lasted longer than the existence of modern humanity. In this stretching of time, the blueprint of the predator began to shift. The rigid bones started to give way in certain lineages to something more flexible, something that could bend without breaking. The chemistry of the ocean was changing, and with it, the very skeletons of the creatures within. The ancestors of the great hunters were beginning to find their form. They were moving away from the sunlit shallows and into the vast, open blue, where the lack of cover meant that the only way to survive was to be the most dangerous thing in the darkness. The water itself was a character in this drama, a dense, unyielding medium that resisted every movement. To thrive here, a creature needed to understand the physics of the flow. The early predators began to develop streamlined shapes, shedding the awkward protrusions of their ancestors. Their tails grew stronger, their fins more precise. They were learning to harness the energy of the currents rather than fight them. Even in these ancient days, the hierarchy of the sea was being established. The slow were consumed by the fast. The blind were found by those who could sense the faint electrical hum of a beating heart. The stage was being set for a lineage that would outlast the dinosaurs, outlast the shifting of the continents, and survive the fire of falling stars. The silence of the deep was no longer empty. It was filled with the subtle vibrations of pursuit. The first marine predators were the masters of a world that was still forming its identity. They swam through seas that had never seen a bird or a flower. They were the pioneers of the kill, the architects of the food chain. Every movement they made was a lesson in fluid dynamics, a slow-motion dance of life and death that played out across the vast, dark floor of the primordial world. As the volcanic activity settled and the oceans grew clearer, the true potential of the sea began to reveal itself. The waters were now a global highway, a massive, interconnected system of currents that could carry life to every corner of the globe. And in the heart of this blue expanse, a new kind of shadow was beginning to take shape. A shadow that would eventually become the most perfect hunting machine the world has ever known. This was the dawn of the age of the hunter. The water was no longer just a womb. It was a battlefield. The creatures that swam here were the ancestors of everything that would follow. But they were also unique entities of their own time, bizarre, beautiful, and terrifying. They moved with a purpose that was purely instinctive, a drive to consume and to endure. The salt in their blood was a mirror of the salt in the sea, a physical connection to the world that birthed them. As the sun set on the first billion years of the ocean's history, the foundations of the future were laid in the silt. The first great era of the sea was ending, but the story of its most famous inhabitants was only just beginning to be written in the dark, cold depths. The transition from the armored, heavy-set titans of the Devonian period to the sleek, agile silhouettes of the first true sharks was not a sudden leap, but a patient unfurling of biological genius. As the ancient ocean stabilized, the heavy plates of bone that had defined the age of fish began to feel like an evolutionary burden. In the shifting shadows of the mid-Paleozoic era, roughly 400 million years ago, a new lineage emerged that dared to discard the weight of bone for the elegance of cartilage. These were the pioneers of the shark line, creatures that looked like living sketches of the predators we recognize today. Yet they possessed a strange, primordial beauty that belonged to a world still experimenting with the limits of form. The water of this era was warm and rich with oxygen, a sprawling playground for the cladoslake, one of the earliest ancestors to bear the unmistakable hallmarks of a shark. Unlike its contemporaries, which were often slow and encased in literal suits of armor, the cladoslake was built for speed. Its body was long and slender, tapering into a powerful crescent-shaped tail that allowed it to slice through the water with a fraction of the effort required by its bony peers. It lacked the scales we associate with modern sharks, its skin smooth and vulnerable, yet its mouth was filled with multi-cusped teeth, sharp, jagged needles designed to catch and grip the soft-bodied prey of the ancient reefs. It moved like a ghost through the underwater forests of giant kelp-like algae, a silent witness to the rising and falling of entire dynasties of life. To understand these first sharks is to understand the miracle of cartilage. While bone is strong, it is heavy and brittle. It sinks. Cartilage, the same flexible material that gives shape to a human ear or nose, provided these early hunters with a skeleton that was light, buoyant, and incredibly resilient. This was the secret to their longevity. A cartilaginous skeleton meant a shark could turn on a dime, flexing its entire body in a way a bony fish never could. It made them the acrobats of the abyss. As they swam, they didn't just move forward. They glided, their bodies working in perfect harmony with the density of the saltwater. This lightness allowed them to occupy different depths of the ocean, venturing from the sun-drenched surface down into the crushing pressure of the deep, where the temperature dropped and the light faded into a permanent, bruising blue. In these ancestral waters, competition was fierce. The Stethocanthus, another early relative, sported a bizarre, anvil-shaped fin on its back, topped with a brush of tooth-like spikes. To a modern observer, it might look like a creature from a fever dream, But in the context of the ancient sea, every strange protrusion served a purpose, whether for defense or the complex rituals of finding a mate. These sharks were not yet the undisputed kings of the ocean. They shared the water with massive sea scorpions and predatory cephalopods with shells the size of trees, but they were the most adaptable. They were the survivors. When the Earth underwent its periodic spasms of extinction, when the oxygen levels plummeted or the temperatures swung wildly, the sharks' flexible biology allowed them to pivot. They were the ultimate rough drafts of nature, refined by the relentless pressure of a world that was constantly trying to kill them. As the millions of years rolled on, the teeth of these early sharks began to evolve, becoming the most enduring record of their existence. Because cartilage rarely fossilizes, the history of the shark is written in its jaws. We see the transition from simple, grasping spikes to complex, serrated blades. This was a response to the changing menu of the ocean. As prey species developed their own defenses, thicker scales, faster speeds, or the ability to hide in the mud, the sharks adapted their weaponry. They developed the conveyor belt system of tooth replacement, a biological conveyor that ensured they were never without a sharp edge. This meant that a single shark could lose thousands of teeth in its lifetime, leaving behind a trail of serrated breadcrumbs in the seafloor sediment for future ages to discover. The environment of the Carboniferous period, often called the Golden Age of Sharks, saw an explosion of diversity that the world has never seen since. With many of the older, armored fish having gone extinct, the sharks rushed in to fill every available niche. There were sharks that resembled eels, lurking in the shadows of river mouths. There were sharks with crushing plates in their mouths for grinding up shellfish. And there were the first true cruisers of the open ocean. The sea was a laboratory of cartilaginous design. During this time, the ocean floor was a mosaic of life, where early sharks patrolled over coral-like structures that were fundamentally different from the ones we know today. The water was vibrant, chaotic, and governed by the law of the jaw. Yet, despite their diversity, a common thread was beginning to bind all these creatures together. They were developing the foundational systems that would make them the perfect predators. Their brains were growing more complex, processing sensory information at speeds that allowed for split-second decisions during a hunt. Their livers were becoming large and oil-filled, providing the buoyancy that their lack of a swim bladder, the air sac found in bony fish, demanded. They were becoming masters of their internal chemistry, balancing the salts in their bodies with the salinity of the sea through a process that was as delicate as it was efficient. They were no longer just fish. They were becoming an institution of the ocean, a design so successful that it would barely need to change for the next few 100 million years. As the Paleozoic era drew to a close, the world faced its greatest challenge: the Permian-Triassic extinction, a cataclysm that wiped out nearly 95% of all marine species. The oceans became stagnant and acidic, a graveyard of lost potential. Many of the strange, experimental shark lineages perished in the heat and the dark, but a few survived. These survivors were the hardy, the efficient, and the versatile. They tucked themselves into the corners of the world where life still flickered, waiting for the planet to breathe again. When the smoke cleared and the waters cooled, the sharks that remained were the direct ancestors of the modern masters. They had passed through the fire, and they were ready to reclaim the blue. The transition from the ancient, experimental forms of the Paleozoic to the streamlined perfection of the modern shark was an odyssey of engineering. To look at a shark is to witness a masterclass in fluid dynamics, a form sculpted by the unrelenting friction of water over hundreds of millions of years. Every curve, every rough patch of skin, and every angle of a fin is a calculated response to the physical laws of the ocean. In the silent theater of the deep, where energy is the only true currency, the shark has become the ultimate economist. It moves with a terrifying efficiency, wasting nothing, a living arrow shot through a medium 800 times denser than air. At the core of this mechanical marvel is the skeleton, which remains a testament to the brilliance of cartilage. While the rest of the vertebrate world moved toward the rigid, heavy architecture of bone, the shark stayed light. This cartilaginous framework is reinforced in key areas like the jaws and the spine with tiny hexagonal plates of calcium called tesserae, giving it the strength of steel without the crushing weight. This lightness provides the shark with a neutral buoyancy that bony fish struggle to maintain. But the skeleton is only the chassis. The skin is the miracle of the machine. To the touch, a shark's skin feels like coarse sandpaper, but under a microscope, it reveals a hidden landscape of millions of tiny, tooth-like scales known as dermal denticles. These denticles are not merely for protection. They are a revolutionary aerodynamic, or rather hydrodynamic tool. Each tiny scale is shaped like a wedge with longitudinal grooves, designed to channel water and reduce the turbulent eddies that create drag. By smoothing the flow of water over its body, the shark can swim faster and more quietly than any other creature of its size. It is a biological stealth technology that human engineers have spent decades trying to replicate for submarines and swimsuits. When a shark accelerates, it doesn't just push through the water. It glides through a self-generated slipstream, a silent phantom that leaves no wake for its prey to detect. The fins of the shark act as the control surfaces of this organic vessel. The iconic dorsal fin on the back provides stability, preventing the shark from rolling as it makes sharp, high-speed turns. The pectoral fins, protruding from the sides like the wings of a glider, provide the lift necessary to keep the shark from sinking, as most species lack a swim bladder and must remain in motion to stay afloat. But the true engine is the caudal fin, the tail. In the great cruisers of the open ocean, like the Mako or the Great White, the tail is a powerful, symmetrical crescent, designed for explosive bursts of speed and long-distance endurance. Driven by thick bands of lateral muscle, the tail beats with a rhythmic, side-to-side motion that propels the predator forward with the force of a piston. Inside this sleek exterior lies a powerhouse of specialized muscle. Most fish possess white muscle, designed for quick sprints but prone to rapid exhaustion. Sharks, however, have a significant amount of red muscle, which is rich in myoglobin and oxygen. This allows them to maintain a cruising speed for thousands of miles without rest. Some species, like the lamnids, have even evolved a complex system of heat-exchanging blood vessels known as the rete mirabile. This wonderful net allows them to retain the heat generated by their muscles, keeping their internal temperature higher than the surrounding water. This warm-bloodedness, or endothermy, gives them a massive advantage in the cold depths, allowing their brains to think faster and their muscles to react with lightning precision while their prey is slowed by the chill. The mouth of the shark is perhaps the most famous piece of its biological toolkit, but it is often misunderstood as a simple trap. It is, in reality, a sophisticated harvesting tool. Unlike human jaws, which are fused to the skull, a shark's upper jaw is loosely suspended by ligaments, allowing it to detach and protrude forward during a strike. This protrusible jaw lets the shark get a better grip on large prey and increases the force of the bite. Behind the front row of active teeth lie several rows of replacements, waiting in a bed of tissue like a conveyor belt. If a tooth is lost or dulled against bone, another slides forward to take its place within days. Depending on the species, these teeth are specialized. Some are serrated saws for tearing flesh, while others are long, thin needles for pinning slippery fish, or flat, crushing plates for pulverizing the shells of crabs and lobsters. Every aspect of the shark's internal biology is tuned to the rhythm of the hunt. Its liver is a massive organ, sometimes taking up nearly a third of its body cavity, filled with squalene, a light oil that further aids in buoyancy. Its digestive system is equally efficient. The spiral valve intestine, a coiled structure that increases surface area in a compact space, ensures that every calorie is squeezed from a meal before it is passed. This is a body that has been refined by the most demanding auditor in the universe: natural selection. There are no wasted parts, no decorative flourishes. Every millimeter of the shark is dedicated to the singular purpose of navigating and dominating the liquid world. As the shark moves through the water, it is not just a predator. It is a sensory platform. The physical structure we see, the gray skin, the black eye, the white underbelly, is merely the housing for a suite of sensors that can detect a heartbeat from miles away or the tilt of the Earth's magnetic field. To see a shark in motion is to see the pinnacle of evolutionary design, a form that was perfected while the first amphibians were still dragging themselves onto muddy shores. It is a design that has seen continents drift apart and mountains rise into the clouds. Yet it has remained virtually unchanged because you cannot improve upon perfection. While the shark's physical form is a masterpiece of engineering, its true dominance lies in a hidden world of perception, a sensory landscape so vast and alien that it defies human imagination. To a shark, the ocean is not a dark, silent void. It is a riot of information, a tapestry woven from chemical trails, electrical hums, and the rhythmic pressure of the tides. They possess the standard 5 senses, but each has been sharpened to a razor's edge, and then augmented by 2 additional powers that allow them to see through solid rock and navigate the trackless blue by the stars of the Earth's own magnetic heart. The journey of perception begins with the nose, which is not used for breathing, that is the work of the gills, but is instead a pair of highly sophisticated chemical laboratories. As the shark glides, water is funneled into nasal sacs lined with sensitive tissue called olfactory lamellae. These folded structures increase the surface area, allowing the shark to detect a single drop of blood dissolved in millions of gallons of water. This is not just about smelling food. It is about reading the history of the current. They can detect the pheromones of a mate, the musk of a rival, or the chemical signature of a distant estuary. This flight to the scent is a slow, methodical zigzag, as the shark compares the intensity of the smell between its left and right nostrils, homing in on the source like a heat-seeking missile following a trail of invisible smoke. As the predator closes the distance, its hearing takes over. Sound travels 4 times faster in water than in air, and over much greater distances. Sharks are particularly sensitive to low-frequency, irregular sounds, the frantic thump-thump of a struggling fish or the splashing of a mammal. They don't have external ears. Instead, they have tiny pores on the top of their heads that lead to an internal ear capable of hearing sounds from miles away. This is the dinner bell of the deep. Long before the shark can see its target, it has already mapped its location based on the vibrations rippling through the water column. But it is the 6th sense that truly elevates the shark into the realm of the supernatural. Along the snout and around the eyes are hundreds of tiny, dark pores known as the ampullae of Lorenzini. These pores lead to jelly-filled canals that act as biological voltmeters. Every living creature, through the simple act of muscle contraction or the beating of a heart, produces a faint bioelectrical field. In the pitch blackness of the midnight zone or beneath a foot of seafloor sand, a shark can detect these microscopic pulses. This sense is so acute that a shark could detect the electrical charge of a single AA battery connected to electrodes 1,000 miles apart. It allows a hammerhead to scan the sand like a metal detector, sensing the hidden heartbeat of a buried stingray, and it provides a final, lethal guidance system in the last inches of an attack when the eyes might be rolled back for protection. Parallel to this electrical sense is the lateral line, a row of fluid-filled canals running the length of the shark's body. This is the sense of distant touch. It allows the shark to feel the movement of water against its skin, detecting the tiny pressure waves caused by a fish swimming nearby or the displacement of a current against a reef. With the lateral line, a shark can feel the shape of its surroundings without ever touching them. It is how they move in perfect synchrony within a school, and how they navigate through jagged underwater caves in total darkness. The water itself becomes an extension of their nervous system. When the shark finally enters the visual range of its prey, its eyes, often described as cold or lifeless, reveal themselves to be marvels of adaptation. Many species have a tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina similar to that of a cat. This silver mirror reflects light back through the retina a second time, allowing the shark to see clearly in conditions where a human would be functionally blind. In the clear, sunlit surface waters, their vision is sharp and color-aware. In the dim depths, It shifts to high-contrast monochrome, picking out the silhouette of a meal against the faint glow of the surface. Finally, there is the mystery of the seventh sense, magnetoreception. Deep within the shark's brain and sensory organs lies the ability to perceive the Earth's magnetic field. To a migrating shark, the ocean is crisscrossed with invisible highways, magnetic landmarks, that guide them across thousands of miles of open water with the precision of a GPS. They can sense the tilt and intensity of the magnetic pull, allowing them to return to the same tiny volcanic island or secluded mating ground year after year, never veering off course despite the lack of any visual cues in the vast, featureless desert of the mid-ocean. To experience the world as a shark is to be part of the water, not just a visitor within it. It is to feel the heartbeat of the ocean, to smell the changing of the seasons in a single current, and to see the invisible sparks of life that flicker in the dark. This sensory suite is why the shark has remained the undisputed master of its domain. It doesn't just hunt. It perceives the very fabric of the environment, making it impossible for anything to stay hidden for long. The transition from a world of sensory input to a world of absolute dominance was a slow, crushing realization of power. As the shark's anatomy and senses reached their zenith, the oceans of the Earth underwent a profound shift. This was the era where the shark moved beyond being a mere participant in the ecosystem and became its architect. To dominate the food chain is not just about the act of killing. It is about the constant looming presence of a shadow that dictates how every other creature lives, moves, and breathes. This is the rise of the apex predator, the final authority in the liquid court of the sea. In the vast, blue theaters of the Cretaceous and later the Cenozoic, the shark began to exert a pressure that shaped the very evolution of its prey. When a predator becomes this efficient, the rest of life must respond or vanish. Fish began to develop swarming behaviors, moving in shimmering, synchronized balls to confuse the shark's lateral line. Marine mammals, like the early whales, were forced to grow to titanic sizes or develop incredible intelligence and social structures to fend off the silent patrollers of the deep. The shark did not just eat. It edited the ocean. It culled the sick, the slow, and the weak, ensuring that only the most fit individuals survived to pass on their genes. This top-down control is the hidden heartbeat of a healthy ocean. Without the shark, the middle-tier predators would explode in number, stripping the reefs of life and causing the entire system to collapse into a barren, algae-choked wasteland. But to maintain this position, the shark had to overcome the greatest challenge of the open ocean: the scarcity of energy. The sea is a desert punctuated by oases. To be an apex predator is to live in a state of constant, calculated patience. This is where the shark's intelligence began to shine through its more primitive instincts. They became masters of the energy budget. A shark does not swim at full speed unless a kill is certain. It glides, using the currents and its own buoyancy to cover hundreds of miles with the minimal expenditure of calories. They learn to time their presence with the migrations of others, arriving at the seal colonies exactly when the pups were most vulnerable, or following the great whale migrations like shadows following a cloud. The rise of the apex predator also saw the emergence of the giants. In the wake of the dinosaurs' disappearance, the oceans saw a vacancy for a titan. This led to the rise of creatures like the Otodus megalodon, a shark so massive its shadow would have darkened an entire reef. While the modern great white is a formidable hunter, the megalodon was a god of the abyss. Growing to lengths of 50 or 60 feet, with teeth the size of a human hand, it was a predator that specialized in the largest prey available, whales. Its rise proved that the shark blueprint was scalable. Whether 6 inches long or 60 feet, the cartilaginous skeleton and the sensory suite remained the gold standard of marine design. The megalodon reigned for millions of years, a testament to the fact that when you are at the top of the food chain, your only real enemy is the changing planet itself. As these giants patrolled the deep, they developed a psychological presence in the water. To be an apex predator is to be a ghost that everyone is watching for. Even when a shark is not hunting, its presence is felt. Smaller predators will vacate a rich feeding ground just because a large shark has entered the area. This landscape of fear keeps the ocean in balance. It prevents any one species from overgrazing a specific area, ensuring that the seagrass beds and coral gardens have time to recover. The shark is the gardener of the sea, using its jaws to prune the hedges of life. The biology of the apex shark also evolved to handle the sheer force of its own power. To bite through the blubber and bone of a whale or a seal requires more than just sharp teeth. It requires a structural integrity that can withstand tons of pressure per square inch. The muscles of the jaw became massive, anchored to a skull that, while made of cartilage, was as dense as rock. The shark's ability to enter a killing trance during a high-speed strike, where the eyes roll back and the brain focuses entirely on the tactile feedback of the struggle, ensured that the predator remained protected even in the midst of a violent encounter. The dominance of the shark is also a story of endurance. Throughout Earth's history, other predators have tried to claim the throne. Giant marine reptiles like the mosasaurs and pliosaurs ruled for a time, but they were tied to the surface for air and ultimately fell to the same extinction events that claimed the dinosaurs. The sharks simply waited. They stayed in the dark, they stayed in the cold, and they stayed efficient. When the sun rose on the post-extinction worlds, the sharks were always there, ready to resume their role. They are the permanent residents of the ocean. Everyone else is just a guest. As we look at the modern apex sharks, we see the culmination of this 400-million-year journey. They are not mindless eating machines, but sophisticated guardians of a complex biological machine. They represent the perfect balance of power and restraint, a lineage that has mastered the art of survival by becoming the one thing the rest of the ocean fears and respects. To understand the shark at the top of the food chain is to understand the ocean itself, for the two are inextricably linked. The shark is the soul of the sea, the silent engine that keeps the blue heart of our planet beating. The silhouette of the great white shark is perhaps the most recognizable shape in the natural world, a form that evokes an ancient, visceral response in the human psyche. Yet, to see the great white only through the lens of fear is to miss the staggering beauty of its biological sophistication. This is the Carcharodon carcharias, a creature that represents the absolute zenith of the lamniform lineage. It is a wanderer of the vast, open corridors of the world's oceans, a predator that possesses the curiosity of a scientist and the precision of an elite athlete. It does not simply swim. It patrols with a deliberate, haunting grace, its charcoal gray back blending into the darkness of the deep, while its snowy underbelly mirrors the flickering light of the surface. The life of a great white is governed by the pursuit of high-energy fuel. Unlike many of its cousins that inhabit the warm, tropical fringes, the great white is a master of the temperate and cold water realms. This is made possible by its warm-blooded physiology. Through the rete mirabile, that intricate web of veins and arteries, the shark keeps its core temperature significantly higher than the surrounding water. This elevated metabolism is the engine behind its intelligence. Its brain, kept warm and fast-functioning, allows for a level of tactical planning rarely seen in the marine world. When a great white approaches a seal colony, it is not merely reacting to a stimulus. It is executing a strategy. It studies the patterns of the waves, the timing of the tides, and the silhouettes of the young seals as they venture out into the shark's alley. The hunting strategy of the great white is a masterclass in ambush and physics. In the waters of South Africa's False Bay or the rugged coastlines of California, these sharks utilize the verticality of the ocean as a weapon. They descend into the gloom, becoming invisible to the prey above. When a target is identified, the shark does not slowly approach. It triggers a massive burst of lateral muscle power, accelerating from a leisurely glide to a staggering 25 miles per hour in a near-vertical ascent. This is the breach, a moment of raw, explosive kinetic energy where several tons of shark launch entirely out of the water, catching the prey by surprise from the blind spot below. But the strike is only the beginning of the process. The great white is a cautious hunter, acutely aware that a struggling seal or sea lion possesses sharp claws and teeth that could damage its sensitive eyes or gills. Upon the initial impact, the shark often delivers a bite and spit maneuver. It inflicts a massive, debilitating wound and then retreats, circling at a distance while it waits for the prey to succumb to blood loss. This is not cruelty. It is calculated survival. During the final moments of the attack, the shark's eyes roll backward into its head, exposing a tough, protective sheath of cartilage. For a few seconds, the shark is blind, relying entirely on its lateral line and the electrical sensors in its snout to guide the final, crushing closure of the jaw. Inside those jaws lies a terrifyingly efficient toolkit. The teeth of a great white are broad, triangular, and heavily serrated, like a series of steak knives. While the bottom teeth act as anchors to hold the prey in place, the upper teeth saw through bone and blubber with a lateral shaking of the head. This sawing motion allows the shark to remove large, calorie-dense chunks of meat, providing the energy required to sustain its massive body for weeks or even months. Despite their reputation as indiscriminate eaters, great whites are remarkably picky. They have been known to sample objects, buoys, kayaks, or even humans with a gentle exploratory bite, often rejecting them immediately because they lack the necessary fat content to justify the energy expenditure of digestion. Beyond the hunt, the great white exhibits a complex social life that science is only beginning to decode. They are not the solitary monsters of fiction. When multiple sharks gather at a large carcass, such as a dead whale, they establish a clear hierarchy. This is often settled through non-violent displays, a tail slap on the water surface, or a specific swimming posture that signals dominance. The larger, more experienced females typically hold the highest rank, and the smaller males give them a wide berth. There is a sense of mutual respect among these titans, a recognition that a fight between two such powerful predators would be mutually assured destruction. The great white's life is one of incredible endurance and mystery. They are capable of transoceanic journeys, crossing the entire blue desert of the Pacific from Hawaii to the California coast with a navigational precision that boggles the mind. During these journeys, they may dive to depths of nearly 4,000 feet, entering a world of crushing pressure and freezing darkness that few other large predators can endure. Why they go there remains one of the ocean's great secrets, perhaps to feed on the giant squid of the depths, or perhaps following the magnetic ley lines of the earth itself. To stand on a boat and look into the eye of a great white is to look into a mirror of deep time. There is an intelligence there, a dark, calculating, and ancient awareness. It is a creature that has found the perfect balance between power and restraint, between the needs of the individual and the stability of the ecosystem. The great white is not a villain. It is a masterpiece. It is the guardian of the cold seas, the final word in a conversation that began in the volcanic mists of the Earth's birth. To lose the great white would be to lose the very soul of the wild ocean. In the sun-drenched nurseries of the tropical shallows and the sweeping plains of the continental shelves, there exists a creature that defies the traditional geometry of the deep. The hammerhead shark of the family Sphyrnidae is perhaps the most radical departure from the standard shark blueprint, a testament to the fact that evolution is not just a process of refinement, but of daring experimentation. To look upon the head of a hammerhead, a broad, flat, T-shaped structure known as a cephalofoil, is to witness one of the most specialized pieces of biological hardware in the natural world. It is a shape that seems almost artificial, yet it provides this predator with a suite of advantages that make it one of the most efficient hunters in the modern ocean. The cephalofoil is not merely an aesthetic quirk, it is a multifunctional sensory array. By spreading its eyes and nostrils to the extreme ends of this wide structure, the hammerhead achieves a level of binocular vision and depth perception that far surpasses its cousins. Most sharks have a significant blind spot directly in front of their snouts, but the hammerhead's vision overlaps, giving it a 360-degree view of the vertical water column. It can see above, below, and behind itself with minimal movement of its head. Furthermore, the The wide spacing of the nostrils allows the hammerhead to sample the water column over a broader area, giving it a superior ability to track chemical trails through the shifting currents. It is the difference between a single sensor detector and a wide-area radar system. Perhaps most importantly, the underside of this hammer is carpeted with a vastly increased number of ampullae of Lorenzini, the electrical sensors that detect the faint pulses of life. This makes the hammerhead the ultimate metal detector of the sea. They are famous for their pursuit of stingrays, which often bury themselves deep beneath the sand to hide. A hammerhead will cruise just inches above the seafloor, swinging its head in a wide, rhythmic arc, scanning the sediment with its massive electrical antenna. When it detects the telltale hum of a hidden ray's heart, it uses the flat edge of its head to pin the struggling prey against the sand, holding it down while it maneuvers its mouth for a precise strike. Beyond their strange anatomy, hammerheads are unique for their complex social lives. While many large sharks are solitary wanderers, certain species, like the scalloped hammerhead, are known to gather in massive, shimmering schools that can number in the hundreds. These gatherings, often centered around seamounts or volcanic islands like the Galapagos or Cocos, are not for hunting. Sharks of this size would quickly deplete the local food source if they hunted as a pack. Instead, these schools are highly organized social hierarchies. They are a place for communication, for the establishment of dominance, and for the selection of mates. In the center of these swirling vortices of silver and gray, the largest and most powerful females hold court. They are the matriarchs of the school, and their movements dictate the flow of the entire group. Younger, smaller sharks remain on the periphery, watching and learning the social cues. They communicate through a series of subtle physical displays: head shakes, torso twists, and sudden, rapid accelerations known as hits. It is a silent language of posture and pressure, a social complexity that hints at a level of intelligence and memory that science is only beginning to grasp. When the sun begins to set, these massive schools break apart, and the individuals vanish into the dark, open ocean to hunt alone, only to return to the seamount at dawn like clockwork. The hammerhead's body is also tuned for high-performance maneuvering. Because the cephalofoil acts like a wing, it provides an enormous amount of lift at the front of the body. This allows the hammerhead to make incredibly sharp turns at high speeds, a necessity when chasing fast, agile prey like squid or schooling fish. Their mouths are relatively small compared to their body size, designed for precision rather than brute force, and their teeth are angled outward to better grip the slippery, rubbery flesh of cephalopods. They are the light cavalry of the shark world, fast, agile, and equipped with the best reconnaissance technology available. Despite their power, hammerheads are among the most sensitive of sharks. Their high metabolic rate means they require constant movement and oxygen-rich water to survive. They are easily stressed, and their bodies react quickly to changes in temperature or water quality. This vulnerability makes their role in the ecosystem even more critical. They are the canaries in the coal mine for the health of the tropical oceans. Where there are healthy hammerheads, there is a healthy reef and a robust food chain. They are a link between the shallow nurseries and the deep blue, a nomadic bridge that carries nutrients and energy across the vast distances of the sea. To see a hammerhead move is to see a creature that has mastered the art of being different. They are proof that in the world of the ocean, there is no single path to perfection. They have taken the ancient shark form and stretched it, flattened it, and refined it into something entirely new. As they glide over the coral gardens, their strange silhouettes casting shadows on the sand, they remind us that the ocean is still a place of wonder and mystery, where the strangest designs are often the most successful. As the light of the sun is swallowed by the crushing weight of the water, we enter a realm that feels less like a part of Earth and more like the cold, pressurized void of deep space. This is the bathypelagic zone, the midnight world where the very concept of time seems to stall. In these lightless depths, the rules of biology are rewritten. Here, the sleek, athletic forms of the surface hunters are replaced by creatures that look like living fossils, bizarre, nightmare-shapen survivors that have haunted the abyss for millions of years. This is the home of the deep-sea sharks, the ghosts of the lineage that chose the darkness over the sun. Among the most haunting of these residents is the frilled shark, Chlamydocelicus anguineus. To look upon one is to look back across 400 million years of history. Its body is not the muscular teardrop of a mako, but a long, serpentine cylinder reminiscent of an ancient sea serpent. It moves with an eel-like undulation, a slow and ghostly slither through the freezing dark. Its name comes from the 6 pairs of gill slits that meet across its throat, forming a ragged, frilled collar. But its most terrifying feature is its mouth. Inside, it carries 300 needle-sharp, trident-shaped teeth, arranged in 25 rows. These teeth are polished white and stand out against the dark interior of its mouth, likely acting as a lure for bioluminescent squid. In the pitch black, a curious prey item might see these glimmering white needles as a school of small, safe fish, only to be trapped in a cage of backward-facing hooks from which there is no escape. Even deeper, in the jagged canyons of the seafloor, dwells the goblin shark, a creature so distinct it occupies its own family tree. With its bubblegum pink, translucent skin and a long, flat rostrum that extends from its forehead like a sword, the goblin shark is a marvel of specialized sensory engineering. This long snout is packed with an extraordinary density of electrical sensors, allowing it to navigate and hunt in a world where eyes are often secondary. But it is the goblin shark's jaw that is its most alien attribute. When it finds a target, a deep-sea crab or a stray fish, its jaws do not simply open. They are held in place by a system of high-tension ligaments. When triggered, the entire jaw apparatus catapults forward out of the face, snapping shut on the prey in a fraction of a second. It is a biological catapult, a necessary adaptation for a predator that lives in a low-energy environment where a single missed strike could mean starvation. The life of a deep-sea shark is a study in extreme patience. In the cold, the metabolism slows to a crawl. The Greenland shark, perhaps the most enigmatic of all, moves at a pace that can only be described as glacial. These massive titans, which can grow to sizes rivaling the great white, inhabit the near-freezing waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic. Because of the cold, their tissues age at a rate that defies human understanding. Scientists have discovered that these sharks may live for 400 or even 500 years, making them the longest-lived vertebrates on the planet. A Greenland shark swimming today might have been born before the founding of the United States, cruising the dark silences of the North while human empires rose and fell above. They are the ultimate survivors, their flesh saturated with high concentrations of urea and trimethylamine N-oxide, natural antifreeze compounds that prevent their cells from crystallizing in the sub-zero temperatures. Energy in the deep is a rare and precious commodity. Many deep-sea sharks, like the cookie-cutter shark, have turned to a parasitic or hit-and-run lifestyle. Small enough to fit in a human hand, the cookie cutter possesses a glowing green belly, bioluminescence used as counter-illumination to blend in with the faint light from above. This makes it invisible from below. When a large predator like a tuna or a whale swims by, the tiny shark latches on with suction cup lips and uses its saw-like bottom teeth to scoop out a perfect, circular plug of flesh before vanishing back into the dark. It is a bold, high-stakes strategy that allows a small creature to feed on the giants of the sea. The biology of these deep dwellers is also marked by their massive, oil-filled livers. In the absence of a swim bladder, which would be crushed by the immense pressure of the abyss, these sharks rely on squalene, a low-density oil, to provide buoyancy. In some deep-sea species, the liver can account for nearly a quarter of the animal's total weight. This allows them to hang in the water column with almost zero effort, waiting for a meal to drift into their sensory range. Their eyes, though often small, are designed to capture every stray photon of bioluminescent light, glowing with a ghostly green or gold sheen when caught in the beam of a submersible's light. These sharks are the silent librarians of the ocean's history. They exist in an environment that has changed very little since the time of the dinosaurs. While the surface world has been ravaged by temperature swings, asteroid impacts, and the rise of humanity, the deep trenches have remained a stable sanctuary. To study them is to see the plan B of evolution, the designs that were cast aside in the race for speed and power at the surface, but which proved perfect for the long, slow endurance of the midnight zone. They are a reminder that the ocean is not just a three-dimensional space, but a four-dimensional one, holding within its depths the living echoes of the ancient past. As we move from these dark, lonely trenches back toward the vibrant, sun-pierced cathedrals of the coast, we see how the shark blueprint adapts once again. From the slow, ghostly slither of the frilled shark to the fast-paced, colorful complexity of the tropics, the shark remains the constant. But in the sunlight, the game changes. The competition is faster, the colors are brighter, and the sharks must become something else entirely to maintain their throne. As the cold, oppressive weight of the midnight zone fades into the memory of the abyss, the water begins to shimmer with an emerald clarity. We rise into the sun-drenched cathedrals of the coral reefs, the most complex and crowded neighborhoods on the planet. Here, the ocean is no longer a vast, empty desert, but a vibrant metropolis of color and noise. In this world, the sharks are not the lonely ghosts of the deep. They are the beat cops, the essential enforcers of a delicate and hyperactive peace. This is the domain of the reef sharks, the black tips, the white tips, and the gray reefs, creatures that have traded the raw size of the open ocean for the agility and cunning required to navigate a labyrinth of limestone. The life of a reef shark is a study in constant vigilance. Unlike their larger cousins, who may travel thousands of miles across featureless basins, a reef shark may spend its entire life within a few square miles of a single coral head. This proximity creates a relationship of absolute interdependence between the predator and the ecosystem. The reef provides the shark with a bounty of food, and in return, the shark provides the reef with the gift of balance. Without these sentinels, the populations of mid-level carnivores, like groupers and snappers, would explode, eventually consuming the herbivorous fish that keep the coral clean of suffocating algae. The shark is the gardener that prevents the jungle from consuming itself. Biology in the reef is optimized for the close quarters encounter. The gray reef shark, for instance, is a marvel of medium-sized engineering. Its body is compact and powerfully muscled, designed for sudden, explosive turns through the narrow crevices of the coral. Its fins are shorter and more rigid than those of an open ocean cruiser, acting like the spoilers on a race car to provide maximum grip during a high-speed chase. These sharks possess an intimate knowledge of the reef's geography. They know every cave that hides a resting turtle, every ledge where the lobsters gather, and every channel where the outgoing tide flushes out disoriented fish. They hunt not by brute force, but by mastery of the terrain. One of the most fascinating residents of this sunlit world is the white-tip reef shark. Unlike most sharks, which must swim constantly to move water over their gills, the white-tip has mastered the art of buckle pumping. It possesses the ability to lie perfectly still on the sandy floor of a cave, manually pumping water over its gills to breathe. This allows it to become a nocturnal specialist. During the day, they are often seen stacked like cordwood in underwater caverns, resting in a state of tranquil suspension. But when the sun dips below the horizon and the night shift of the reef emerges, the white tip transforms. It becomes a fluid, slender hunter that can weave its way into the tightest holes in the coral, flushing out sleeping prey with its flexible body. The social dynamics of the reef are equally sophisticated. Reef sharks are often seen in groups, but these are not the mindless schools of lesser fish. There is a pecking order established through subtle body language. A shark will communicate its mood through its posture, arching its back and lowering its pectoral fins to signal a warning to an intruder. This threat display is a sophisticated way of avoiding actual physical conflict. In a world as crowded as a reef, a serious injury can be a death sentence, so the sharks have evolved a complex system of etiquette to resolve disputes. they are also remarkably curious. On a healthy reef, sharks will often approach divers or researchers not with aggression, but with a calculated, investigative interest, using their lateral lines to feel the presence of the newcomers. The nurseries of the reef are perhaps the most vital part of this story. In the shallow lagoons and the tangled roots of the mangroves that border the reefs, the next generation of hunters begins its life. These mangrove nurseries are a safe haven, where the dense roots provide a protective cage against larger predators while offering a feast of small crustaceans and fry. Here, the juvenile sharks learn the rules of the water. They learn to read the currents, to recognize the silhouettes of prey, and to navigate the complex social hierarchies of their own kind. It is a childhood of high stakes, where only the most observant and adaptable will survive to take their place on the outer reef. As the tide ebbs and flows, these sharks act as the pulse of the reef. They are the connectors of different habitats, moving nutrients from the deep outer walls into the shallow inner lagoons. Their presence is a hallmark of a pristine environment. When the sharks vanish from a reef due to overfishing or habitat loss, the change is almost immediate. The colors of the reef begin to fade as the ecological gears grind to a halt. The fish becomes sickly, the coral becomes overgrown, and the vibrant metropolis turns into a ghost town. To see a reef shark glide over a garden of elkhorn coral is to see the ocean in its most perfected state. They are the guardians of the sunlit world, the elegant masters of a realm where every inch is contested. They remind us that power does not always have to be massive to be absolute. In the intricate, colorful puzzle of the coral reef, the shark is the piece that holds everything else in place. A silent shadow that ensures the light continues to shine on the most diverse habitat on Earth. For centuries, the shark was relegated by science to the status of a swimming nose, a creature driven by nothing more than the electrical impulses of hunger and the primitive machinery of the hindbrain. This perception, however, was born of our own lack of observation, not the shark's lack of capacity. As we have begun to peer more closely into their lives, a new picture has emerged, one of a calculating, social, and highly adaptable intelligence. The shark does not simply react to the ocean, it learns from it. It remembers the past, plans for the future, and navigates a social world that is as complex as any found in the forests or the savannas. The physical seat of this intelligence is a brain that is far more developed than those of most other fish. In many apex species, the brain-to-body mass ratio is comparable to that of birds or even some mammals. Particularly striking is the size of the forebrain or telencephalon, which in sharks is dedicated to high-level sensory integration and learning. This isn't just about processing smells. It's about making sense of a multidimensional world. Researchers have discovered that sharks are capable of social learning, a hallmark of higher intelligence. In controlled studies, juvenile lemon sharks were observed watching their peers solve a puzzle to reach a food reward. The sharks that watched the experts learned the task significantly faster than those left to figure it out on their own. This ability to transfer knowledge through observation suggests a culture of learning that was once thought to be the exclusive domain of primates and cetaceans. Memory is the anchor of this intelligence. A shark's life is a long-form narrative, and they have the capacity to recall specific locations and events over vast spans of time. There are documented cases of sharks returning to the same exact square meter of a reef after a journey of thousands of miles, not just by following magnetic lines, but by recognizing the topography of the currents and the chemical signatures of the terrain. They remember where the food is plentiful during specific lunar cycles and where the dangers lurk. This temporal memory allows them to be proactive rather than reactive. If a shark encounters a new object, like a research cage or a novel piece of prey, it will often perform a series of investigative passes, bumping the object or taking a gentle, sensory-rich bite to gather data. This information is then filed away, informing every future encounter with similar objects. Socially, the solitary label is being stripped away. Many sharks exhibit a preference for specific companions, forming what can only be described as long-term friendships. In the shallow flats where lemon sharks congregate, individuals have been found to repeatedly associate with the same partners, ignoring others of the same age and size. This suggests a level of individual recognition and personality. Some sharks are bold, the first to investigate a new stimulus, while others are shy and observant. These personality traits influence how the group functions as a whole, with leaders and followers emerging naturally. They communicate through a subtle, silent lexicon of body language. A dip of a pectoral fin, a slight arch of the back, or a change in swimming speed to signal intent, avoid conflict, or coordinate a group effort. One of the most profound displays of shark intelligence is their ability to solve problems in the wild. Great whites have been observed using the sun as a tactical tool, positioning themselves so that they are hidden in the glare when approaching prey from the surface. This shows an understanding of the environment from the perspective of the prey, a cognitive leap known as theory of mind. They are also capable of cross-modal association, meaning they can link information from different senses to form a complete picture. They might hear a sound, associate it with a specific smell they encountered years ago, and then adjust their visual search pattern accordingly. This isn't just instinct. It is a mental synthesis of data that allows them to thrive in an environment that is constantly changing. The intelligence of a shark is also reflected in their restraint. They are not the killing machines of Hollywood lore. They are highly discerning. They often choose not to attack, even when an easy meal is present, because they are calculating the risk of injury. A wounded shark is a vulnerable shark, and their intelligence serves as a survival mechanism that keeps them out of unnecessary harm. They have been known to play, interacting with kelp fronds or inanimate objects in ways that serve no immediate purpose for feeding or mating, a behavior that is usually a sign of a complex, understimulated brain. As we move deeper into the study of shark cognition, we find that the gap between us and them is narrower than we ever imagined. They are the primates of the sea, possessing a mental depth that matches their evolutionary age. Their intelligence is a different kind of brilliance, one tuned to the frequencies of the water and the rhythms of the Earth's magnetic heart. It is a reminder that the ocean is not just a place where things happen. It is a place where things are understood. The shark is a sentient witness to the blue world, a thinking, feeling being that has mastered the art of living through the power of its mind as much as the power of its jaws. In the quiet, sheltered margins of the world, where the churning violence of the open sea is tempered by the emerald embrace of mangrove roots and the gentle sway of seagrass, the cycle of life begins anew. The reproduction of sharks is perhaps the most diverse and sophisticated in the aquatic world, a departure from the quantity over quality strategy of most fish. While a tuna may broadcast millions of eggs into the current, leaving them to the whims of chance, the shark invests deeply in the few. Their methods of bringing forth life are a cinematic journey of patience, ranging from the architectural beauty of mermaids' purses to a form of live birth that mirrors our own mammalian heritage. The journey begins with the dance of courtship, a ritual that is often misunderstood as aggression. Because sharks lack the delicate appendages of land animals, their mating is a physical, sometimes scarring encounter. A male shark will often use his teeth to grip the pectoral fin of a female, holding her steady in the current. This is why female sharks have evolved skin that is significantly thicker than that of males, a living suit of armor designed to withstand the rigors of procreation. In the silence of the deep or the shadows of a reef, this embrace is a moment of profound biological significance, the passing of genetic blueprints that have remained successful for hundreds of millions of years. Once the spark of life is struck, the paths of shark species diverge into three distinct miracles. The first is oviparity, the laying of eggs. Species like the small spotted cat shark or the ornate wobbegong produce intricate, leathery cases made of collagen. These cases often feature long, curling tendrils that the mother carefully snags onto sea fans or kelp stalks. Inside this protective purse, the embryo is fueled by a rich yolk sac. For months, the tiny shark grows in the dark, its rhythmic movements pumping fresh, oxygenated water through slits in the case. To see a developing embryo through the translucent wall of its egg case is to see a tiny, golden ghost, already possessing the unmistakable silhouette of a hunter, waiting for the moment its internal fuel runs out and it must face the world. The second path, and perhaps the most common among the great cruisers, is ovoviviparity. This is a bridge between egg and infant. The mother carries the eggs inside her body, but there is no placental connection. The young hatch internally and continue to grow, nourished by their yolk sacs or, in the case of the sand tiger shark, by a more primal method. In the womb of a sand tiger, the largest and strongest embryo will often consume its smaller siblings, a phenomenon known as intrauterine cannibalism. This survival of the fittest before birth ensures that the pup who eventually emerges into the ocean is not just a survivor, but a battle-tested predator, born with the size and strength to defend itself from the moment it hits the water. The final path is viviparity, true live birth. In species like the lemon shark or the hammerhead, the mother develops a complex placental connection to her young, similar to the umbilical cord of a mammal. She provides them with nutrients and oxygen directly from her own bloodstream. This allows the pups to grow to a substantial size before they are born, often reaching a third of their mother's length. When the time comes, she seeks out a nursery, a specific shallow water sanctuary that she may have been born in herself years prior. These nurseries are the sacred grounds of the shark world. In a mangrove nursery, the water is warm, still, and shallow enough to exclude the large predators that would view a pup as an easy meal. Here, the newborn shark enters the world fully formed and independent. There is no parental care. The mother's job is done the moment the pup is born. The juvenile shark must immediately rely on its instincts. Its first few weeks are a frantic education in the art of the hunt. It chases small shrimp and tiny fish among the tangled roots, learning how to use its lateral line to navigate the maze and its electrical sensors to find prey hidden in the silt. This period of life is a high-stakes gamble. While the nursery provides protection, it is also a place of intense competition among siblings and other species. These nursery grounds are the lifeblood of the ocean's shark populations. They are the factories of the apex predators, the places where the future of the species is secured. The bond between a shark and its nursery is so strong that some individuals will migrate thousands of miles just to return to the exact lagoon of their birth to pup. It is a biological homing beacon, an ancient memory etched into their DNA. As the pups grow, they slowly gain the confidence and the bulk to venture further from the roots, moving toward the patch reefs and eventually the drop-offs where the deep blue begins. To witness a shark pup's first moments is to see the weight of history in a tiny, fragile package. It is a creature that has been perfectly prepared for a world that will never be easy. The investment the mother shark makes, months or even years of gestation, the risk of the nursery journey, and the energy of placental growth, is the reason the shark has endured through 5 mass extinctions. They do not leave their legacy to chance. Every pup is a finely tuned instrument of survival, a continuation of a lineage that has mastered the art of beginning again, one birth at a time, in the quiet corners of the sea. The ocean is not a collection of static territories, but a fluid, global highway, and the shark is its most tireless traveler. To understand the shark is to understand the scale of the world, for they do not measure distance in miles, but in the shifting temperatures of currents and the invisible pull of the Earth's magnetic core. For a shark, the entire planet is a single, interconnected home. They are the nomads of the blue, embarking on journeys that make the migrations of Serengeti herds or Arctic birds seem modest. These are the long-distance mariners, creatures that spend their lives in a state of perpetual motion, tracing the contours of the continents and the deep, silent canyons of the mid-ocean ridges. The catalyst for these journeys is often the pursuit of an invisible, seasonal bounty. The ocean is a place of boom and bust. What is a lush feeding ground in the spring may be a barren desert by autumn. The great white sharks of the Pacific are perhaps the most famous of these wanderers. Each year, they depart the temperate waters of the California coast and head west into the vast, open expanse of the blue desert. They congregate in a remote mid-ocean region known as the White Shark Cafe. For months, they remain in this featureless void, diving deep into the twilight zone during the day and rising to the surface at night. Why they gather there remains one of the most compelling mysteries of marine biology. Perhaps it is a social crossroads, a mating ground, or a hidden larder of deep-sea squid. What is certain is the precision of their arrival. They cross thousands of miles of open water to meet at a specific coordinate with the accuracy of a GPS-guided vessel. But how does a creature without a map navigate the trackless blue? The answer lies in their seventh sense: magnetoreception. Deep within the shark sensory systems are cells that can perceive the Earth's magnetic field. To a migrating shark, the ocean floor is not just sand and rock. It is a landscape of magnetic peaks and valleys. They can sense the dip and intensity of the magnetic pull, allowing them to follow invisible ley lines across the globe. They are also sensitive to the Coriolis effect and the subtle changes in gravity, using the very rotation of the planet to orient themselves. They are tuned to the frequency of the Earth itself, moving in harmony with the planet's internal pulse. The whale shark, the gentle giant of the lineage, is another master of the long journey. These titans, some reaching the size of a city bus, follow the green ribbon of the ocean, the blooms of plankton and the spawning events of coral and fish. They are the ultimate followers of the sun, moving from the Ningaloo Reef in Australia to the coast of Mexico, and then across the Atlantic to the shores of Africa. Their migration is a slow, rhythmic pulse, a testament to the fact that even the largest creatures in the sea are dependent on the smallest. By tracking these giants with satellite tags, scientists have discovered that a single whale shark can travel over 12,000 miles in a few short years, crossing entire oceans without ever losing its way. Migration is also a biological bridge, a way for sharks to maintain genetic diversity. In the vastness of the sea, populations could easily become isolated, leading to the slow decay of the species. But the travelers ensure that genes are swapped across hemispheres. A female mako shark, the fastest of all sharks, may birth her pups in the North Atlantic and then swim across the equator to feed in the rich upwellings off the coast of South America. These journeys are not without peril. The migrating shark must run a gauntlet of changing temperatures, fluctuating prey availability, and the ever-increasing presence of human industrial fishing. To survive a transoceanic journey is a feat of extreme endurance and calculated energy management. The vertical migration is just as significant as the horizontal one. Many sharks, like the elusive thresher or the deep-dwelling blue shark, spend their days in the cold, dark safety of the deep, only to rise hundreds of meters to the surface as the sun sets. This daily commute is a dance with the deep scattering layer, the massive biomass of small fish and squid that moves toward the surface under the cover of darkness. By moving vertically, the shark can stay within its preferred temperature range while still accessing the rich food sources of the sunlit zone. It is a three-dimensional life, a constant balancing act between the need to hunt and the need to conserve heat and energy. These migrations also reveal a startling level of memory and sight fidelity. Tiger sharks, for instance, have been known to return to the same tiny Hawaiian cove on the same week every year to feast on fledgling albatrosses. They remember the timing of the bird's first flight with uncanny precision. This suggests that the shark's internal map is not just spatial but temporal. They don't just know where to go, they know when to be there. Their lives are a series of perfectly timed appointments with the cycles of the moon, the tides, and the seasons. To contemplate the migration of the shark is to realize that they are the true citizens of the world. They do not recognize the borders of nations or the boundaries of maps. They belong to the currents and the wind, to the magnetic fields and the ancient rhythms of the sea. Their journeys are a reminder that the ocean is a single, breathing organism, and the sharks are the red blood cells that carry the life and energy of the system from one end of the planet to the other. They are the proof that in the water, nothing is truly ever lost, and no one is ever truly alone, as long as they follow the pull of the deep. In the flickering light of a campfire or the blue glow of a cinema screen, the shark has been transformed into a symbol of primal terror, a mindless, vengeful specter that exists only to consume. This is the myth of the man-eater, a narrative constructed from our own deepest insecurities and our ancestral fear of the dark. We are land creatures, vulnerable and clumsy in the water, and we have projected that vulnerability onto the shark, casting it as the villain in a story it never agreed to join. To look at the reality of the shark through the lens of science, however, is to see a creature that is remarkably indifferent to humans, a predator that finds our bony, low-fat frames to be a poor substitute for the calorie-dense treasures of the sea. The origin of this myth is a collision of biology and psychology. For most of human history, the shark was a mystery, a shadow seen from the deck of a ship or the edge of a reef. It wasn't until the 20th century that the image of the rogue shark, a lone predator that develops a taste for human flesh, took hold of the public imagination. But science has found no evidence for such a creature. Sharks do not hunt humans. We are not part of their evolutionary menu. In the hundreds of millions of years they have patrolled the oceans, they have refined their senses to identify specific prey. The oily richness of a seal, the metallic hum of a tuna, the crunch of a crustacean. Humans, by comparison, are evolutionary outliers, strange, vertical, and chemically unappealing. When we look at the statistics, the myth of the man-eater begins to crumble under the weight of logic. Every year, millions of people enter the ocean to swim, surf, and dive. If sharks were truly the relentless hunters of fiction, the casualty rate would be astronomical. Instead, the number of unprovoked shark encounters globally is vanishingly small. You are more likely to be struck by lightning, injured by a falling vending machine, or bitten by a New Yorker than you are to be harmed by a shark. The vast majority of shark attacks are, in reality, fleeting encounters of mistaken identity or investigative curiosity. To a shark, a human on a surfboard may look like the silhouette of a seal from below, or a splashing swimmer may mimic the erratic vibrations of a dying fish. Once the shark realizes its mistake, often after a single exploratory bite, it typically moves on, finding the experience as unpleasant as we do. The cold-blooded killer moniker is also a biological fallacy. As we have explored, sharks possess high levels of intelligence, social complexity, and even individual personality. They do not kill out of malice or anger. They kill for sustenance, and they do it with a level of restraint that is almost clinical. In many parts of the world, humans and sharks coexist in the same water every day without incident. In the clear waters of the Bahamas or the Maldives, shark tourism has revealed that these animals are often shy and cautious, easily spooked by the bubbles of a scuba regulator or the sudden movements of a human. They are the ones who are afraid of us, and for good reason. Human activity is the only true threat to their ancient lineage. The psychological impact of the shark myth has been devastating for conservation. It is much harder to garner sympathy for a creature that people perceive as a monster. This Jaws effect has led to a culture of fear that, for decades, allowed the mass slaughter of sharks to go largely unnoticed or even celebrated. Culling programs, where large nets and drum lines are used to kill sharks near popular beaches, are often reactive measures designed to soothe public anxiety rather than address scientific reality. These programs frequently catch non-target species like turtles and dolphins, while failing to actually make beaches safer, as sharks are highly mobile and will simply be replaced by others from the open ocean. To dismantle the myth, we must replace fear with understanding. We must recognize that the ocean is a wild space, and when we enter it, we are entering a world where we are no longer at the top of the food chain. This realization should evoke respect, not terror. The shark is an essential part of the marine machinery, the top-down regulator that ensures the ocean remains vibrant and healthy. When we remove the shark, the entire system begins to fail. The true man-eater in the ocean is not the shark, but the industrial fishing fleet, which kills upwards of 100 million sharks every year. An ecological catastrophe that far outweighs any harm a shark has ever done to a human. As we move toward a more enlightened relationship with the sea, the image of the shark is beginning to change. We are starting to see them as the magnificent, ancient, and vital beings they are. They are not our enemies. They are our elders. They have seen the world change in ways we can barely imagine, and they have much to teach us about resilience, adaptation, and the delicate balance of life. By letting go of the myth, we open the door to a deeper connection with the natural world, one where we no longer fear the shadows, but appreciate the complexity of the creatures that inhabit them. In the rare and tragic moments when the path of a shark and a human collide, the world often rushes to label the event as an act of malice. However, when we peel back the layers of sensationalism and look through the cold, clear lens of science, we find that these incidents are almost always a case of biological static, a breakdown in communication between two very different species. To understand why a shark might bite a human is to understand the physics of light, the limitations of sensory perception, and the high-stakes environment of the predation zone. It is a phenomenon of geometry and mistake, not a hunt for a new kind of prey. The primary culprit in most encounters is the phenomenon of mistaken identity, and it begins with the way light behaves in the water. To a human standing on a beach, the ocean looks transparent, but to a shark looking upward from the depths, the surface is a shimmering, distorted mirror. This is Snell's window, an optical effect where light from the sky is compressed into a circle of brightness, while everything outside that circle is a dark, high-contrast silhouette. When a surfer sits on a board, their dangling arms and legs create a shape that, from below, bears a striking resemblance to the flippers of a sea lion or the tail of a seal. In the turbulent, frothy water of a breaking wave, the white water, the visual data becomes even more cluttered. The shark, seeing a high-energy silhouette in a place where it expects to find food, may commit to a strike before it has the chance to realize the silhouette is made of fiberglass and neoprene rather than blubber and bone. The test bite is another scientific explanation for these rare events. Sharks do not have hands to feel the texture of an object or a complex vocal system to ask what something is. They explore their world with their mouths, which are packed with sensitive nerve endings. If a shark encounters a novel object in its environment, like a human, it may use its teeth to gather information. This is why many shark encounters involve a single bite followed by a swift departure. The shark sensors immediately report that the object is not a high-fat marine mammal. It is bony, muscle-dense, and lacks the caloric reward necessary to justify the energy of a struggle. For the human, the result is a serious injury, but for the shark, the result is a rejection of an unpalatable and foreign substance. Sound and vibration also play a critical role in these misunderstandings. The splashing of a swimmer or the frantic paddling of a surfboard creates low-frequency pressure waves that travel through the water for miles. To a shark's lateral line, these vibrations are indistinguishable from those of a distressed fish, a creature that is injured, struggling, and therefore an easy target. In the murky water near river mouths or after a heavy storm, where visibility is near zero, the shark relies almost entirely on these vibrations. It is hunting by ear, and in the chaos of a crowded beach, the sensory input can lead to a predatory reflex. The shark isn't targeting a human. It is targeting a vibration of opportunity that happens to be coming from a person. Environmental factors often act as the stage setters for these incidents. Most shark encounters occur in what scientists call high-traffic areas, the drop-offs of sandbars where fish naturally congregate, or near colonies of seals. When humans enter these specific zones, especially during dawn or dusk, the crepuscular periods when light is low and predatory activity is high, the risk of a sensory error increases. Furthermore, human activity often inadvertently lures sharks closer to shore. Fishing piers, where bait and blood are constantly introduced into the water, act as massive chemical lures. A shark following a scent trail of fish guts may find itself in the middle of a swimming area, its predatory drive switched on by the smell, leading to a state of high arousal where it is more likely to react to any movement. There is also the factor of territoriality and defense. While sharks are generally not territorial in the way a dog or a bear might be, they do have personal space. A diver who corners a shark in a cave or a swimmer who inadvertently bumps into one may trigger a defensive snap. A get-away-from-me reaction common to almost all wild animals. This is not a predatory act, but a reflexive one. The shark is protecting its gills and its eyes, its most vulnerable points, from what it perceives as a potential threat. In these cases, the bite is a warning, an ancient biological no delivered in the only way the shark can. By explaining these incidents through biology and physics, we remove the monster from the equation and replace it with a wild animal operating under the laws of nature. We learn that the ocean is a place of rules, and by following those rules, avoiding murky water, staying away from fishing activity, and respecting the zones of the apex predators, we can coexist with them in almost total safety. The shark is a master of its environment, but it is not infallible. It can make mistakes, and in the vast majority of cases, those mistakes are just as startling for the shark as they are for us. Understanding the why behind these rare events is the first step toward a more mature relationship with the sea. It allows us to move past the irrational fear that has fueled decades of slaughter and instead treat the shark with the respect and caution that any ancient, powerful force of nature deserves. We are the visitors in their world, and the burden of understanding lies with us. Long before the first scientific journals were bound or the first motion pictures flickered into life, the shark existed in the human mind as a being of divine power and ancestral significance. For the seafaring cultures of the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean, the shark was not a monster to be conquered, but a deity to be appeased, a guardian to be revered, and a relative to be honored. In these ancient worldviews, the line between the human world and the marine world was thin and porous. The shark was a bridge between the living and the dead, a creature that commanded the tides and held the secrets of the deep in its unblinking eyes. In the heart of the Pacific, the relationship between the Hawaiian people and the shark, or mano, reached a level of spiritual intimacy found nowhere else. To the Hawaiians, certain sharks were aumakua, ancestral spirits that took animal form to guide and protect their descendants. These were not generic predators. They were specific individuals, recognized by the patterns on their skin or the way they moved through the surf. Families would feed their shark aumakua, believing that the spirits of their departed loved ones lived on within the great fish. A shark appearing during a difficult voyage was seen as a sign of protection, a navigator from the spirit world sent to lead the canoes safely to shore. This was a culture built not on the fear of the jaw, but on the respect for the spirit. The craftsmanship of these ancient cultures reflected this deep connection. In the absence of metal, the shark provided the ultimate edge. The teeth of the tiger shark and the great white were harvested with reverence and fashioned into the laimano, a formidable club studded with serrated edges. These weapons were more than just tools of war. They were objects of immense prestige, carrying the mana, or spiritual power, of the shark itself. To carry a shark-tooth weapon was to channel the speed, strength, and fearlessness of the ocean's apex hunter. Even the skin of the shark was prized, its rough texture used to create the heads of sacred drums, the rasping sound of the wood against the skin echoing the voice of the sea. Further west, in the Solomon Islands, the cult of the shark was even more literal. Rituals were performed to call the sharks from the deep, with priests acting as intermediaries between the village and the predators. In some regions, sharks were believed to be the judges of the ocean. If a person was lost to a shark, it was often interpreted not as a random tragedy, but as a divine sentence, a sign that the individual had broken a sacred taboo or offended the spirits of the sea. This belief system created a natural conservation of the species. One did not kill a judge unless one wished to invite the wrath of the entire ocean. In the mythology of the Australian Aboriginal peoples, the shark often appears in the Dreamtime stories, the foundational narratives of how the world was formed. In the Gulf of Carpentaria, the hammerhead shark is a creator figure, its wide head having carved out the riverbeds and shaped the coastline as it swam through the primordial mud. For these First Nations people, the shark is a part of the song lines, the invisible paths that crisscross the continent and the sea, linking the people to the land and the ancestors. The shark's movements are tied to the seasons and the stars. When certain constellations rise, it is a sign that the sharks are puppying in the mangroves, and the harvest of the sea must be adjusted accordingly. Even in the West, before the modern era of industrial fishing and cinema, the shark occupied a place of mystery and omens. Ancient Greek sailors spoke of the Carcharias, a word that denoted both the shark's jagged teeth and its relentless nature. In the Mediterranean, sharks were often associated with the gods of the storm and the sea, seen as the hounds of Poseidon. They were the cleaners of the maritime world, following the wakes of triremes and merchant vessels, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of Mediterranean empires. This ancient human perspective was fundamentally different from our modern one because it acknowledged the shark's place in the order of things. There was no illusion of human dominance over the ocean. The sea was a vast, sovereign territory, and the shark was its rightful ruler. People understood that to enter the water was to enter a different jurisdiction, one where the laws of the land no longer applied. This created a culture of ocean literacy, an intuitive understanding of shark behavior, migration, and ecology that was passed down through chants, stories, and laws. As we look back at these ancient legends, we find a wisdom that we are only now beginning to rediscover through science. The ancients knew that the shark was essential. They knew that a sea without sharks was a sea without life. By casting the shark as a god or an ancestor, they ensured its protection and, by extension, the health of the entire marine world. These stories remind us that our fear is a modern invention, a shadow cast by our own disconnection from nature. To the ancients, the shark was a light in the dark, a powerful, beautiful, and necessary part of the great tapestry of existence. The transition from the era of reverence to the era of industrial slaughter is a dark chapter in the history of the Earth, a moment where the shark's 400-million-year reign met a force it could not out-evolve: human greed. In the late 20th century, the ocean became a factory floor, and the shark, once a god of the deep, was reduced to a commodity. This is the era of overfishing and the brutal practice of finning, a biological heist that has systematically hollowed out the blue heart of our planet. While the shark has survived asteroid impacts and shifting continents, it is now facing a threat that is moving faster than its ability to reproduce, pushing many of the world's most iconic species to the very edge of the abyss. At the center of this collapse is the global demand for shark fin soup, a luxury dish that carries a heavy ecological price. The practice of finning is a portrait of extreme waste. Sharks are caught, their fins are sliced off while they are still alive, and their bodies, the vast majority of the animal, are tossed back into the sea. Without their fins, these master swimmers cannot move, cannot pump water over their gills, and cannot hunt. They sink to the bottom like stones, where they slowly suffocate or are consumed by scavengers. It is an industrial process that kills upwards of 73 million sharks every year, driven by a market that values a status symbol over the stability of the global ecosystem. But the threat is not limited to finning alone. The rise of industrial longlining and bycatch has created a gauntlet that no migrating shark can truly escape. Long lines, stretching for 60 miles and baited with thousands of hooks, do not discriminate. They pull everything from the water: sea turtles, albatrosses, and millions of sharks that are often killed and discarded before they ever reach a port. Because many shark species, like the great white or the oceanic whitetip, are slow animals, taking a decade or more to reach sexual maturity and producing only a few pups every few years. Their populations cannot bounce back from these losses. We are spending the biological capital of the ocean far faster than it can earn interest, leading to a state of ecological bankruptcy. The loss of sharks is not just a tragedy for the animals themselves. It is a disaster for the entire ocean. As we have seen, the shark is the architect of the food web. When the apex predator is removed, the trophic cascade begins. In the North Atlantic, the collapse of large shark populations led to an explosion in the number of cownose rays. These rays, no longer kept in check by the sharks, decimated the local scallop and clam beds, destroying a multi-million-dollar human fishery and stripping the seafloor of life. By killing the shark, we are inadvertently killing the very things we rely on for food. The ocean is a machine of a billion parts, and we are removing the governor that keeps the engine from spinning out of control. The biology of the shark, once its greatest strength, has become its greatest vulnerability in the face of modern fishing. Their reliance on high-quality habitats, like the coral reefs for nursing or the seamounts for social gathering, makes them easy targets for commercial fleets that use satellite data to track every ripple in the water. Furthermore, the shark's inquisitive nature and its sensitive electrical receptors make it susceptible to the metallic hum of fishing gear. They are drawn to the very things that will kill them. In the span of a single human lifetime, we have seen the populations of some open ocean shark species plummet by over 90%. The blue desert is becoming truly empty, not because of a lack of life, but because we have siphoned it away. There is also a hidden trade in shark meat, often mislabeled and sold under names like flake or rock salmon. Because sharks sit at the top of the food chain, their bodies act as biological sponges for toxins. Through a process called biomagnification, they accumulate high levels of mercury, lead, and arsenic from the smaller fish they consume. By the time a large shark reaches maturity, its flesh can be a toxic cocktail, dangerous for human consumption. Yet, the trade continues, fueled by a lack of transparency and a global supply chain that hides the origin of the product. We are not just destroying an ancient lineage, we are poisoning ourselves in the process. To see a pile of shark fins drying on a concrete pier is to see the physical manifestation of our disconnection from the natural world. It is the end point of a narrative that began with fear and ended with apathy. But the story is not yet over. The collapse of shark populations has sparked a global movement of scientists, divers, and activists who are fighting to change the narrative. They are working to expose the reality of the trade, to push for international bans on finning, and to convince governments that a living shark, as an engine of tourism and ecological health, is worth infinitely more than a dead one. The shark is a mirror of our own stewardship of the planet. Their decline is a warning, a biological red flag that the systems of the Earth are being pushed beyond their breaking point. If we cannot find a way to coexist with a creature that has been part of the ocean for 400 million years, what hope is there for the rest of the wild world? The fate of the shark and the fate of the human are now inextricably linked, tied together by the health of the blue expanse that covers 2/3 of our home. While the industrial world has spent decades depleting the oceans, the world of modern science has turned its gaze toward the shark with a newfound sense of humility. We are beginning to realize that the shark's body is not just a masterpiece of hunting. It is a living library of solutions to some of the most complex challenges in medicine and engineering. This is the field of biomimicry, the practice of looking to nature's time-tested designs to solve human problems. After 400 million years of refining their biology, sharks have developed technologies that we are only now starting to decode, from the microscopic architecture of their skin to the indestructible nature of their immune systems. The most revolutionary discovery lies in the very texture of the shark's skin. For years, scientists wondered why such a slow-moving creature as a whale shark or a bottom-dwelling nurse shark remained so remarkably clean. In the ocean, almost every stationary surface, the hulls of ships, the pilings of piers, even the shells of turtles, is eventually colonized by algae, barnacles, and bacteria. Yet, shark skin remains pristine. This is due to the sharklet effect, named after the specific arrangement of dermal denticles. The microscopic ridges on these scales create a surface tension that makes it physically impossible for bacteria to find a foothold. Unlike chemical disinfectants that kill bacteria and encourage the rise of superbugs, this is a mechanical solution. Today, engineers are replicating this microscopic pattern on plastic films for use in hospitals, coating high-touch surfaces like light switches and bed rails to prevent the spread of infections without the use of a single drop of antibiotic. The shark's internal chemistry is equally miraculous. One of the greatest mysteries of marine biology is why sharks seem to be so resilient to the diseases that plague other vertebrates. They possess an immune system that is fundamentally different from ours. While humans rely on a complex but often slow-reacting system of antibodies, sharks have a heavy-chain antibody structure that is incredibly small and stable. These tiny proteins, known as IgNARs, immunoglobulin new antigen receptors, are capable of squeezing into the hidden crevices of viruses and cancer cells that human antibodies are too large to reach. In laboratories around the world, researchers are now using synthetic versions of these shark antibodies to develop new treatments for everything from rheumatoid arthritis to certain types of tumors. We are learning how to borrow the shark's ancient resilience to fortify our own fragile bodies. The study of shark blood and tissue has also revealed a remarkable ability to heal. A shark can sustain a massive wound from a rival or a boat propeller and show signs of total regeneration within weeks, often without the telltale signs of infection or heavy scarring. This is due to a unique combination of high urea levels and specialized compounds in their mucus that act as a natural, wide-spectrum antiseptic. Science is looking into how these compounds might be synthesized to create smart bandages for human burn victims or to speed up the healing process after major surgeries. The shark is essentially a swimming pharmacy, carrying the chemical secrets of wound repair that have been perfected since the Paleozoic era. International law has also begun to catch up with the reality of the deep. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species has gradually added more and more shark species to its protected lists, including hammerheads, oceanic whitetips, and even the iconic great white. These listings make it illegal to trade these animals across international borders without rigorous permits, effectively choking off the supply to the luxury markets of the East. Coupled with this is a massive cultural shift in Asia, where a younger generation, influenced by celebrities and environmental campaigns, is increasingly rejecting shark fin soup as a symbol of outdated and destructive consumption. The demand is falling, and with it, the incentive for the slaughter. But conservation is not just about stopping the killing. It's about restoring the habitat. Efforts are underway to protect the shark nurseries, the mangroves and seagrass beds that are the cradles of the next generation. By replanting coastal forests and reducing the runoff of pollutants from the land, we are ensuring that the pups born today have a clean, safe environment in which to grow. Citizen science has also become a powerful tool, with divers and photographers around the world uploading thousands of photos to global databases like Wild Book for whale sharks. Because the spot patterns on a whale shark or the notches on a great white's fin are as unique as a human fingerprint, these databases allow scientists to track individual animals for decades, building a life history that informs better protection strategies. There is also a growing movement in bycatch mitigation, the development of technology that prevents sharks from being caught accidentally. Researchers have developed sharkacids, small magnetic or electronic devices that can be attached to fishing hooks. These devices emit a faint electrical pulse that is harmless to bony fish but intensely annoying to the sensitive ampullae of Lorenzini of a shark, acting as a no trespassing sign that encourages the predator to move on. These innovations show that coexistence is possible. We can feed a growing human population without sacrificing the apex predators that keep the system healthy. The emotional heart of shark conservation lies in the changing perception of the animal. Through high-definition documentaries, virtual reality experiences, and citizen diver programs, millions of people are seeing sharks not as monsters, but as elegant, vulnerable, and essential beings. This rebranding of the shark is the most important conservation tool we have, for we only protect what we love. The fear that once fueled the Jaws era is being replaced by a sense of awe and responsibility. We are beginning to see ourselves not as the masters of the shark, but as its stewards. As we look toward the horizon, the work is far from finished. The populations of many species remain at historically low levels, and the illegal ghost trade, still haunts the dark corners of the global market. But for the first time in a century, the tide is beginning to turn. The shark is no longer a silent victim. It has a global voice of advocates, scientists, and lawmakers fighting for its right to exist. The ancient line of the shark, which has survived the fires of 5 mass extinctions, is now finding its greatest ally in the very species that nearly brought it to its knees. As the shark navigates the threshold of the 21st century, it faces a challenge more insidious than any hook or net. The very chemistry and temperature of its world are changing at a rate unseen in the 400 million years of its lineage. This is the era of the shifting seas, where climate change is rewriting the map of the ocean and forcing the masters of the deep to become environmental refugees. The shark, an animal defined by its stability, is now being tested by a world in flux, revealing both the limits of its ancient physiology and the unexpected flexibility of its prehistoric mind. The most immediate impact is the thermal squeeze. Sharks are ectotherms, meaning their internal temperature is dictated by the water around them. As the oceans absorb the heat of a warming atmosphere, tropical waters are becoming uncomfortably, and sometimes lethally, warm for many species. In 2026, researchers have documented a significant poleward shift in shark populations. Tiger sharks in the North Atlantic are extending their migrations nearly 250 miles further north for every degree of warming, appearing in waters off the coast of New England that were once far too cold for them. This is not just a change in geography. It is a disruption of timing. Sharks are arriving at their northern feeding grounds weeks earlier than they did a decade ago, sometimes out of sync with the arrival of the prey they depend on. For the high-performance athletes of the shark world, like the scalloped hammerhead, the heat carries a heavy metabolic price. A warmer ocean speeds up a shark's metabolism, forcing it to hunt more frequently to maintain its energy levels. In regions like the Red Sea, silky sharks have been observed abandoning the surface waters entirely during heat waves, seeking refuge in a narrow band of cooler, deeper water. This habitat compression forces sharks into crowded corridors where they are more likely to encounter commercial fishing lines, turning a climate refuge into a potential trap. But the changes go deeper than temperature. As the oceans absorb carbon dioxide, they are becoming more acidic, a process known as ocean acidification. Recent studies published in early 2026 have revealed a startling consequence: the corrosion of the shark's most famous weapon. The dermal denticles of their skin and the highly mineralized enamel of their teeth are susceptible to the lowering pH of the water. In lab conditions mimicking future ocean acidity, shark teeth showed visible surface damage, cracks, and structural degradation. For a predator that relies on its teeth to grip and saw through prey, weaker teeth could mean a diminished ability to feed, a ripple effect that could weaken the entire health of the individual and, eventually, the population. The nurseries, too, are under siege. The mangroves and seagrass beds where pups spend their first vulnerable months are being hit by rising sea levels and more intense, frequent storms. Increased sedimentation and changing salinity from heavy rainfall can overwhelm these delicate systems. Yet, even in this crisis, some species show a remarkable ancient resilience. The epaulet shark, the walking shark of the Pacific, has been found to maintain its reproductive output even under intense environmental stress, a biological rule breaker that suggests some lineages may be better prepared for the future than others. The shift in shark behavior is also changing the way they interact with humanity. As sharks move into new territories to find their thermal sweet spot, they are entering waters where coastal communities are not accustomed to their presence. This makes the work of modern conservation even more urgent. We can no longer rely on static protected areas. We need climate-adaptive management that moves with the sharks as they follow the shifting currents. The marine protected areas of tomorrow must be as fluid as the animals they are designed to save. The shark is the sentinel of the Anthropocene. Its movements are a living record of the planet's health, its body a barometer for the changes we have set in motion. To save the shark in the age of climate change is to save the ocean itself. for their struggle is a reflection of the larger crisis facing all marine life. They have survived the Great Dying and the asteroid that claimed the dinosaurs. They are the ultimate survivors. But as the oceans warm and the acidity rises, the question remains: can the shark outswim the shadow of human impact? The answer lies in our ability to cool the planet and protect the paths of these ancient wanderers. In the final reckoning of the deep, we find that the shark is not an outlier of nature, but its pulse. To conclude our journey is to realize that we are not merely observers of these ancient predators. We are their contemporaries in a shared, fragile moment of Earth's history. The shark, having survived 5 mass extinctions and outlasted the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, now stands as the ultimate guardian of the blue. Their presence is the hallmark of a world in balance, and their absence would be a silence that echoes through every level of the biosphere. If the sharks were to vanish, the blue heart of our planet would begin to fail. We would witness a trophic cascade of devastating proportions. Mid-level predators would multiply unchecked, decimating the herbivorous fish that keep our coral reefs clean. The seagrass meadows, one of our most potent weapons against climate change, would be overgrazed into deserts, releasing billions of tons of stored carbon back into the atmosphere. The ocean would lose its white blood cells, those sentinels that cull the sick and the weak to prevent the spread of disease. A world without sharks is a world of stagnant reefs, empty fisheries, and a broken climate. It is a world that, quite literally, would struggle to breathe, for every second breath we take is provided by the very ocean that sharks protect. The future of the shark is a choice that lies entirely in our hands. As we move deeper into the 2020s, the tools for their survival are already at our disposal. The satellite tags that map their highways, the international laws that ban the fin trade, and the burgeoning field of biomimicry that finds healing in their very skin. We are replacing the Jaws narrative with one of awe, moving from a culture of fear to a culture of stewardship. We are learning that a shark is worth infinitely more as a living engine of tourism and ecological health than as a bowl of soup or a trophy on a wall. To look into the eye of a shark is to see the deep past and the potential future joined in a single, unblinking gaze. It is a reminder that the wild still exists, that there are still mysteries in the dark, and that perfection can be found in a form that has not needed to change for millions of years. They are the true masters of the long game, the silent architects of the sea, and the witnesses to the endurance of life. The story of the shark is the story of the ocean itself. Vast, powerful, misunderstood, and essential. By ensuring their survival, we are ensuring our own. We are choosing a future where the oceans remain vibrant, where the reefs remain colorful, and where the ancient shadows continue to glide through the emerald light, as they have done since the beginning of time. The shark has done its part for 400 million years. Now, it is our turn to ensure the patrol continues.